You're listening to the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast with Karen McMahon. We invite you into a journey of healing and personal transformation that will radically change your divorce experience, heal your heart while refining your character, and enable you to be effective and feel empowered as you navigate the practical and emotional challenges of divorce. Divorce is like a foreign land, filled with unfamiliar rules and jargon, and pressure to make complex decisions that will impact the rest of your life. Don't go it alone. Go to rapidreliefcall.com and get the support and guidance you need. Stepping into the realm of high-conflict divorce can be daunting after years in a dysfunctional marriage that's left you feeling diminished and uncertain. In our High Conflict Divorce Demystified series, we acknowledge the emotional roller coaster you're on, facing self-doubt and fear, especially regarding your children and finances. We're here to provide empathy, education, and guidance as you navigate the maze of legal intricacies and emotional challenges ahead. So let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of High Conflict Divorce Demystified. Today we're talking about how to diffuse tension and resolve conflict during high conflict divorce. I'm thrilled about today's conversation with Hesha Abrams, a brilliant mediator, negotiator, and author of Holding the Calm, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. It's a book jam-packed with strategies to minimize conflict, settle disputes, and create a safe space for the thorniest of individuals to feel heard and seen so they can find their way back to the negotiation table. I've asked Hesha to join us and custom tailor some of her advice to our JBD listeners who have made this courageous decision to leave their high conflict spouse, and now after being bullied and intimidated by them, to develop the skills needed to navigate their divorce conversations and negotiations skillfully and successfully. So I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Before we dive in, just a little more about Hesha. As I said, she's an internationally acclaimed master attorney, mediator, negotiator, and deal maker who for 30 plus years has been renowned for her success in resolving high profile or difficult matters, including mediating the case over the secret recipe for Pepsi. Well, that's a story. She has worked with Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook, IBM, Verizon, and other large multinational companies, as well as individuals, investors, and small businesses, creating deals and solving disputes. She's distilled her experience into this book, Holding the Calm, The Secret to Resolving Conflict and Diffusing Tension, which is so insightful. And she's shared that she too has been down the divorce journey. So with no further ado, welcome Hesha. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I have to ask, I've been reading the book for the last week, highlighting, underlining, thinking of all the things I want to bring to my clients and to this conversation. How did you end up down this path of being this super powerful, successful negotiator?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was a lawyer, and with the actual story is that I was very aggressive because that's how we don't really train women to know how to do things in our speed. So either you're not taken seriously or you're super over aggressive. And in 1 week, I won a case that I really know my client was wrong, and I just out-lawyered the other side. And then I lost a case that was a pro bono eviction thing where I got good old boy down to the courthouse. And I had a crisis of faith. I went, okay, this cannot be what this is, and mediation was still very nascent, very new. And I met this woman that was a mediator at a bar meeting of lawyers. And she said, she's a mediator. I went, what's that? Wait a minute. You talk to people for a living and solve problems? oh my God, this is like fantastic. And then over the years, I've refined it because so many of the books out there that talk about conflict, they're just garbage. They're academic. Yes, let's all get to yes and be nice with each other. And yeah, okay, that works in what? 10% of the cases? Let's say even 20. What about the 80% where I hate you? I'm
Right.
afraid of you. You scare me. You're evil. You're selfish. You want to hurt me. There's a power imbalance. There's betrayal. There's blah, 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 blah. What about those? Okay, because that's the majority of stuff. Even in the business and corporate world, I'll tell you, it's the same kind of thing. But in divorce, I wish we could make decoupling an easier process, but for the vast majority of people, God Almighty, it is not. And so you need real tools, not fake kumbaya. Oh, that's what it should be. It's chocolate cake is fattening, even though I don't want it to be. So you need real live stuff. And that's literally why I wrote this book.
Yeah, and the book has just got so many great tips on how to deal with the stubborn personality and the value of validating. And I love the wowed way out with dignity. They're just like, I was reading and I was like, every page is so filled with pearls. And I do want to say that when it comes to mediation, while I've had numerous mediators saying you can mediate a high conflict divorce, I think what you just said is key. If you don't have the right mediator, if you have a mediator who's used to mediating reasonably minded, transparent couples who are saying, we don't want to spend a lot of money, we can figure this out. That's very different than mediating with someone who's been traumatized for years and somebody who might have a personality disorder, might just be stubborn or passive aggressive, might have some other addiction, but who seems almost incapable of coming to the table and hearing and compromising and pivot. So I want to have two conversations with you today. One, I do want your advice for our listeners on if you really want to mediate, what are you looking for in a mediator? Because I think that you're that person who can answer the question. And then just for all of the conversations that you either do or don't want to have that you have with your soon-to-be ex, how can our listeners do that with more grace and dignity?
Well, isn't that the question?
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to say to everybody is, for God's sakes, give yourself some grace. This is very hard stuff, very hard. And if it were that easy that we could wave a magic wand and go, boom, you're done, you take a pill, it would be fine. So you have to give yourself some grace. Everybody has some differential that they have to deal with. And so chapter 1 of my book is speak into the ears that are hearing you. That's number 1. And what tends to happen is a lot of people have heard about the 5 love languages, which I love, by the way. I think it's a terrific book. And it doesn't matter if they're right or not. What matters is that I don't treat everyone the same. Like, why would I say, Karen, what is wrong with you? Why don't you eat pizza? Everyone eats pizza. It's an American food. Are you just ridiculous? Without finding out you're gluten intolerant and you can't eat pizza, right? It's so simple because people don't volunteer their vulnerabilities. So the first thing is that in any situation, you've got to identify the ears you're speaking into. And I'm going to give a couple of different analogies here because our brains will remember analogies more than what my words are. So there's like a bomb in the town square. That guy waddles out in his Michelin suit. He doesn't just start cutting stuff. Looks, diagnoses. What is the pressure switch? What's the chemical thing? What do I do? It's the same thing when you're dealing with a high conflict person. You cannot assume that logic, reason, rationale, good communication are good tools. They are not. They are actually bad tools to use because nobody likes to be splained to. Nobody. And think about this. Ever in the history of the world has someone said, you know what? Yeah, I heard your arguments now. I'm wrong. I'm stupid. I didn't think about this correctly. You're right. It's idiotic. And yet it's what we do, right? So the first thing literally is to look at the other person. So let me give you a couple of easy things, because some of our people listening to us know what a Myers-Briggs is, or the DISC, or those are all very complicated psychological evaluative tools. I don't have time to give you a test and say, take 3 hours, take this test. You know, like you got to have something that works kind of quick and fast. So let me give you 3 things to check on before you're going to talk to somebody. Now, this works in divorce, but this works with a boss, a coworker, a teenager, the homeowners association, your religious organization. There's high conflict people everywhere, right? Where you bristle against each other. So before I just decide to talk to you, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to think to myself, are you an introvert or an extrovert? That's pretty easy. Everybody can generally do that, right? Are you an introvert or an extrovert in your head? Wouldn't you talk to an introvert a little differently than you talk to an extrovert? Everybody just kind of intuitively knows that. How about we go a little deeper? Are you a thinker or are you a feeler? And you know how you figure that out? Listen to their verbs. I think this is a good idea. I feel it in my gut. It's not hard. I mean, people will self-reveal. If you say, are you a thinker or a feeler? You won't get a good answer because people don't know themselves very well. Just listen to their verbs. Literally, verbs are everything. So what they say, okay, if you're a feeler, I'm not going to give you data and information, and I'm not going to talk logically with you. If you're a thinker, I'm not going to talk about feelings and about intuition and about gut. It's pretty simple when you say it like that, right? Third, big picture person, detail person. Big picture person talks about, oh, how it would work and all like that. Detail is, I'm balancing my checkbook to the penny. Round it off. No, calculate it exactly, right? Those 3 things, when you're talking to somebody, and see how simple that is? It's not some big fancy test. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you a thinker versus a feeler? Are you a big picture person versus a detail person? That's
And
it.
those 3 tells, so it makes sense to me. Like I could have a conversation and read those 3 tells, right? So what do you do with that?
I shape my message. So what happens is that we always say, you should be a good listener and you should listen and communicate, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but it's very hard for people to do that when what you're saying is stupid or wrong, or I disagree with it, or I can't believe you have the absurdity to tell me that. Your brain just kind of shuts down. But if I give my brain another diagnostic tool, I'm listening to you, I'm looking at you, I'm listening. So I'm hearing whatever content you're telling me, but I'm diagnosing those 3 things. Now, when it comes time to me to talk, if you're an introvert, I'm going to speak more quietly, more softly, more slowly, more gently. If you're an extrovert, I'm going to speak faster, a little more intense, a little stronger. If you're a big picture person, I'm going to talk about the large thing. What are we trying to accomplish? If you're a detail person, what are the steps we need to start with to try to accomplish something?
Wow.
If you're a thinker versus a feeler, I'm going to use thinking, feeling verbs.
Right.
What do you think about this? How do you feel about that? What do you think would be the right approach to do? What do you think would be the fair approach to do? See, if you think about this, it's actually very easy. Like what I just gave everybody is a 2-hour training, or actually they probably do a whole day training on you. Just write down what I did and practice it. If you practice what I just gave you for a week, it's like you didn't have glasses and all of a sudden you put on glasses and went, whoa, I thought there were only 3 colors in the rainbow. Whoa, there's so many more. That's all that happens. And it is not hard. And you know the cherry on the sundae with that? You will feel powerful, you will feel empowered, and you won't feel powerless and fearful because you got tools, my friends. You got magic beans in your pocket.
Okay, it's actually fascinating. And I love like that speak to the ears that are listening to you, right? So you started off with that. We just can't talk to everybody the same. Well, we can, but it doesn't necessarily serve us. And
Correct.
it's going and speaking a foreign language to somebody who can't hear it if you're not speaking their
Correct.
language.
Correct. And what tends to happen, if you don't speak my language, I don't think, oh, we're not speaking the same language. I think you're stupid. You're an idiot. You're evil. You hate me. You don't respect me. Because our amygdala is then go boom, 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 boom. real quick,
Right.
which I guarantee you is 80% wrong. But when our amygdala is triggered, man, things are moving so fast and you can't see it. So having this diagnostic ability to step back, it gives you a moat around what you're feeling and how you choose to react. It is, I can't tell, it's the number one thing to make you feel powerful. And it goes back to the question you had asked me earlier. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, lots of conflict, lots of difficulty. And so hence I've had lots of therapy and did a lot of work on myself. And so it's taken me decades to finally really understand. And of course, can I still get triggered? But that's why I called that the book, Holding the Calm. I say that to myself. And I want to do a joke for everybody. Never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down by being told to calm down. Right?
It incites you. It just like.
And we all know that, but isn't that what we do? Calm down, take a deep breath. All you're really saying to the other person is, yo, you're out of control and powerless, but I'm in control and powerless. All you do is make the amygdala go, row, more. So if you just stop talking and literally, instead of taking a deep breath, because I don't really find that that really works, because it basically says you're out of control, girlfriend. And I don't want to say that to myself. I want to say empowering things to myself. So I say, I close my eyes for a second. I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. I'm holding the calm. That took 2 seconds. That says to my amygdala, we have tools. We have choices. We have options. You are not powerless. And the amygdala goes, ooh, okay. Now, what do I choose to do? What do I choose to say? It is incredibly empowering to then not make everything worse in whatever you're having to deal with.
Have you lost yourself in your marriage, fallen into self-doubt, insecure and uncertain of your own viewpoints? If you've disappeared behind the shadow of your partner's personality, the Reclaim Your Mind free mini course will help you understand how you got here and the exact steps needed to regain control of your life. Go to jbddivorcesupport.com/reclaim your mind and get started today. I want to just really hone into holding the calm. We have a 12-step program where we talk about the pause and curbing the conflict, to take that pause. Am I understanding that holding the calm is both slowing things down, taking a pause, as well as what? Like when you say, oh my God, I've been working with Karen, she is so great at holding the calm now. What does that look like?
Diagnostic ability. That's what I would say. Think of this going to a doctor. You don't want to go to a doctor who says, I gave the blue pill to the guy just before you. Maybe it'll work for you too.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. How about another analogy? How about someone's covered in blood and they go into the ER? Doctor doesn't just start cutting them. You wipe the blood away. Where's the gunshot? Where's the knife? What do I have happening here? In any sense of conflict, the first question has to be, what is happening? What is happening? Could it be a real issue? Is someone just angry or hungry or just having a bad day? I got a lot of stuff in the book about how to handle those kinds of things, because very often people will backpedal and go, I didn't mean it that way. That came out harsher than I thought. You know, there's plenty of things to do for what I call the middle ground, low and middle conflict. High conflict is a little more intense. You need a life raft. Okay, but you got to diagnose first, what am I dealing with? Because if you're triggered and you do something, well, you just always do that. You just always do. And then, okay, boom, we are off to the races. And think about this, everyone listening, when you have fights with some of these people, isn't it the same fight? Just
Over and
the facts.
and over again.
And that's because we pick up the bait. If you take a moment to diagnose, first of all, who's in charge? Who has power? You can say, we're not going to play basketball. I'm not going to throw that ball back to you. We're going to play golf. And I'm going to hit it that way. You have power to change how it's going to be. And all that's going to happen is something better. Either it's a cold piece You know, when I first started mediating, I was very naive and idealistic. And I wanted everything to be, oh, running through the meadow, hands holding each other. Yay, it's all so great. Yeah. And now I'm a realist to go, you know, you get what you can get. And if all you can get is a cold peace with a cessation of hostilities, rock and roll, that is fine. If it can get better, that's marvelous. And I have a whole chapter in the book called Creating Small Winnable Victories, because you don't do things big. You do things in little, small, incremental pieces. You erode conflict from the outside. And is it hard? Of course it's hard. But is it better than the alternative? Yeah.
As I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, I just had a little interaction with my son this morning when I dropped him at the train, and we have a great relationship, and there was a misunderstanding. And I had just been reading your book right before I got in the car to take him there. And as soon as I pulled away, I was like, you did not hold the calm. What I realized was he was trying to get his point across, and I was trying to get my point across. And I heard his point, and I said, I hear you. But that's where I stopped.
Well, did he feel heard?
Well,
Doesn't matter what you said.
Exactly.
Does he feel heard? That's always the key. And if the other person doesn't feel heard, it doesn't count.
And then he was able to articulate to me, he's like, I know you said thank you, but, and then he told me what he needed to hear.
Yeah.
And so it was fascinating that I was just reading your book, because I was like, and I'm pretty good at this, but I have a long way to go. This was not high conflict, but it was still an unnecessary rub. Like, it could have been a lovely conversation.
I love it. Good for you. Good for you. You know what I want to say to everyone listening too? Every time this happens for any of you, go, yay me. Yay. I was aware. I saw something. I'm going to do it better next time. And good for you, because most people go, I didn't do anything wrong and he did this. Okay, so really intelligent wisdom just came out of your mouth. So everyone else here, give yourself grace when that happens to you too.
Absolutely. And I think the point I want to get to is, even in this interaction, I had a point I wanted to get across. But to your point, if I just go straight at it, it's not going to be received. And so for my listeners, they're finally finding their voice, and they've got a point they want to get across, and direct is not going to work. And so that piece of going from, like, it's almost like we have to learn how to bite our tongue and shift from getting my point across to diagnosing first so that I get further.
Correct.
Can you kind of say that more lovely than me?
Well, think of it this way. Anybody who has planted anything, you don't just dig a hole and shove it in the ground, right? You prepare the soil so that the plant isn't going to die. Anybody who's a fisherman or a fisherwoman, right? You don't just shove any old thing on your hook. You put the right bait on the hook for what it is you're trying to fish for. It's just basic preparatory stuff, right? And we tend to not do that. I'm going to get my point across. But if it's not received, or it doesn't do any, what am I doing? I'm taking dollar bills and lighting them on fire. I'd rather put the dollar bill in the bank, right? So if it means you take that diagnostic step to step back, and we are all going to screw up. And I'll tell you something I do in my own family, because I want everybody to have permission to screw up. Because if you strive for perfection, you will fail. And that sets up a really bad dynamic in our country. Think about how we vivisect our leaders because they're not perfect. Who would want to be? I wouldn't want to be a leader and get attacked like that. So you don't get quality people as your leaders. You get kind of sociopaths and narcissists who can handle that kind of junk. So what you do in your family is you say, everyone makes mistakes. We are not perfect. And you have permission to do a do-over. A do-over is the greatest invention ever. So, like, for example, in the story you said, when we get off this interview, if you called your son and say, you know, I didn't like how I handled that, can I have a do-over? He's going to be shocked. You don't have to say, I was wrong, I was right. No, that's irrelevant. You say, I didn't handle that as well as I would have. Can we have a do-over? Would you tell me again? And then you do it the way you wish you would have. I'm telling you, you get more credit for screwing up and then doing it better the second time than if you had done it right the first time.
Yeah.
Isn't that just marvelous.
Well, first, I love that. When I was in the early stages of my divorce, my kids were early grade school and everyone was like triggered to the hilt. And we sat down and I said, everyone's allowed to for do-overs. And I can't tell you, there were times where they were screaming and yelling and we'd pull over on the side of the road and I'm not moving. And then someone would be like, can I do a do-over? And it was just this gorgeous gift. So I love that you just said that in the context of this conversation, because I think that the other thing that when you're in these hostile relationships and you've been told how bad you are, you're striving for perfection. And there is no such thing as perfection. And it's progress, not perfection. And the do-over is a beautiful progress in the right direction. So just thank you so much for that, Colonel. I love that. I
Good.
love that. So I have a bunch of questions here. You're doing your best, you're diagnosing, but all of a sudden the conversation is escalating. It's kind of like now you're on this runaway freight train and you don't know what to do.
Right. You
What's
stop. You literally, the biggest key is the awareness, because what happens is you'll be on that freight train and you're not even aware you're on it. That's more dangerous. As soon as you are aware, you stop. You just stop and say, this is not helpful, or this is not healthy, or I don't want to play this game anymore. And then if you can, say something validating. You're a good person. I know you're trying your best. I know you don't want to hurt me. I know you have good intentions. I don't care. I know you're hurt. I don't care what it is. You just say something validating, because their amygdala is freaking the heck out. And you know what validation does? Oh, baby. Oh, baby. And it just calms it down. That's what's so magnificent. So that's step number one when things get out of control. And then, like the book, reason I did this is I wanted a book that actually worked, wasn't with this theory and academic junk. And so I picked my favorite 20 techniques. So it's 20 chapters, 20 techniques in a little $15 paperback. So it's something that's super easy for people to access. And then I put sentence stems in there and I put stories. Why is the Bible, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Book of Mormon, the Buddhist Dharmasalas, everything is in stories? Why? Because I can just go, yeah, 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 yeah. But everyone listening to us is going to remember the bomb detection story. And they're going to remember the person in the ER covered in blood story. And I'm going to tell more stories as we're talking here. Every story I put in the book is designed to be told in 30 seconds or less. And they work. I've battle tested them in my laboratory. So I've used every single story I put in there, I have used at least a dozen times and it works. So rather than me saying, Karen, now you need to calm down and we need to look at things rationally, I want to go out and claw your eyes out, if you do that. Instead, I can sit and say, can I share a story with you? You're not going to say no to me. And then I share this story. And each story has an insight to where you're going to go, I have one story, I have a chapter in the book called Be the Grown-Up in the Room. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But if you can, here's a great story. So it's a story that I tell people where if I'm doing something and I need Karen, I need you to be the more mature one. I'm not going to say to you, you need to be the more mature one, because you're going to want to go, can I share a story with you? And then I tell you the story about mountain rams in the Himalayas. And every single time the person goes, why do I have to be the mature one? And I just smile and I go, because you are. And then it works every time. I'm telling you, this stuff is great. And the stories work that way because the goal is to get something to happen, not to be right, not to educate, not to explain. Is to, like, at least in my world, I'm very result oriented. I don't really care about your intentions. I care about your outcome. Did the thing you have work? If it didn't work, why are we doing that? And by the way, I do a lot of pharmaceutical cases. Did you know that a drug can get approved by the FDA if it is 52% effective?
Oh my.
And if it's 55 or 60, then it's considered a blockbuster. A 60% effective is a 40% failure rate. That is shocking, right? So I'm saying that to everybody. Grace, 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 give yourself some grace. And it's about getting a little bit better and a little more mastery and a little calmer and a little stronger. And then you do this, and all of a sudden, I mean, like I've got mad skills, right? I didn't get them right away.
Right.
I've done this for 35 years. And I'll tell you this, I'm 65 years old. I figure by the time I'm 70, maybe I'll know something.
Yeah.
That's literally how I view it. I better be smarter in 5 years than I am now, or I failed. So if I'm constant improvement and constantly learning and constantly growing and constantly getting better diagnostic ability and sharper vision, this is why I don't burn out in my job, because I'm curious. What is interesting? What is different? What else can I learn? How can I get better? How can I get sharper? And it's not about being the sharpest, the best. It's about me. How can I improve a little bit, not get triggered as much, roll with it a little much, have a better boundary? I mean, all that stuff is, brick upon brick upon brick upon brick. And then you wake up one day and it's 5 years later and you go, hot darn, look at that. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let me ask you about one or two more situations, and then I want to pivot to what someone should look for in a mediator. Are you facing high conflict divorce after enduring a long-standing power imbalance with your spouse? Don't let fear and uncertainty hold you back. Our Divorce 101 program provides an experienced and compassionate guide to empower you with new techniques to manage emotional, financial, parental, and legal challenges. Visit jbddivorcesupport.com/divorce101 and get started today. A lot of times with these high conflict personalities, there's a lot of blame. There's the deflect and defend game. There's the blame and accuse and defend. When someone is trying to do these and what they keep getting back is, well, yeah, but you and that, what is the best strategy for handling that? Because I'm sure we all handle it pretty sloppily.
Yes, you are completely correct. I have a chapter in the book called The Blame, Defend, Justify Death Dance.
Yes. And
we all do it. We all do it. If you start blaming me, I'm going to get defensive. I mean, it's just the natural piece of it. So one, you want to try to not be blaming. You'll get a better reaction. But we all do. Even I do. Every once in a while, I have to go, oh, I didn't mean it. Can I have a do-over? I didn't mean for that to come out blaming. We use I statements, all the stuff that, in therapy and people talk about. But if you screw up, because you're going to screw up 7 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 times, the do-over. That didn't come out right. Can I say that again? Right? Or that's one. Let's say your partner's blaming you. Yeah. You can say, instead of saying, you're blaming me, you can say, I'm feeling defensive because I'm feeling blamed. Would you do a do-over and try to say that differently so I can hear you? Wow. Isn't that a game changer? Because the other person then has to now take responsibility to go, what, And again, who's got the power in that interchange? You. And when you have power, what happens to your amygdala? Calms down. And the thing is, you may not pick it up on the first round. You may pick it up on the 4th round. Okay. Whenever you pick it up, you pick it up. And then you will just get better and better and better and better at it. And realizing that people, when they're hungry, they're tired, they're cranky, they're fearful, they're stressed, no one acts at their best. Right? So like everybody needs an, oh, poor baby. Oh, calm it down, baby, And so it's different if you're afraid someone's really dangerous to you. Okay, you have to handle that a little differently because boundaries comes first and safety comes first. But unless you're dealing with that small percentage of people that really are psychopaths, we tend to throw around labels like psychopath, sociopath, narcissist. We throw them around. You have to really see, is this person clinically impossible to talk to? There are some people like that. Okay, you got to handle them differently. I'm sorry, you do. But that's 10%. Let's say 20. It's not 80%.
Right.
And we throw those labels around. The other person's acting the way they are because they're either immature, they're not skillful, they're fearful, they're childish, they're stressed out. There's other reasons what's happening there. So I have another trick that I like to use.
Okay.
Let's say I have to engage with you. And this isn't really going to work, quite frankly, for high conflict spouses because it's sort of a one-off. It's something you do when you have to deal with somebody, not all the time. But I don't know, a lawyer screaming at you from the other side, a neighbor, your ex's friend, there's all those kinds of things. And man, I don't want to deal with you because I don't like you. And you challenge me and threaten me, and you are not a friend. My brain will go friend or foe, and you are not a friend, you are a foe. But I got to deal with you for some reason.
Right.
So I'm going to look at you and I'm going to ask myself one question. Would you pull my kid out of a burning car? And if the answer to that is yes, there's something redemptive about you. Now, 95% of the time it will be true. The answer to that is yes. Now I have to look at you, and what it does is it breaks the train flow of the sympathetic nervous system that just kind of runs like a runaway choo-choo to go, okay.
Not completely bad, right? It's like bad person. Well, there's something there.
There's something there, right? I read a ton of books on neuroscience, and neuroscientists have identified 147 cognitive biases. And it's absolutely fascinating. And I'll tell people at the end when they're trying to connect with me on LinkedIn, I post every single day. And I post a lot about these kind of little biases because they're so interesting because you're not even aware that you have it. And being able to say, oh, that's what that is. So for example, there's something called confirmation bias. I will see what I expect to see. So that burning kid car thing shifts that. There's something called the bias of reciprocity. If I listen to you, it's more likely you're going to listen to me. If I give up a little power to you, you're more likely to give up a little power to me. And I want to caution everybody, I live by the 80-20 rule. This is about good for 80% of the time. The outliers to where somebody is mentally ill, completely addicted, psychotic. So, okay, you have to handle those things in a more extreme way because those are extreme, but it's like 10% on either side of the bell curve. The 80% is more normative that we should be able to handle better. And the ones that are on the more extreme, you just have to handle them in a more extreme way, which is sort of case by case.
And I want to say to you, the listener, even if you're sitting there and you're going, yeah, mine's an outlier, you still have your children who were raised by you and him or her.
Mhm.
And you still have all of the other situations in life that fall into the 80%. I have a lot of books. I'm a self-help junkie. I read this stuff all the time, anything that can support my followers. Your book is just fabulous. It's underlined on every page, and I've got all these notes. And so you also give little, what I forgot what you called them, but little clips of sentences, like sentence stems, to start or to cut conflict and what have you. It's like a coach in a book on how to, stay calm and negotiate successfully. And so can you take a moment now to just talk about the book and where people can find it? And then I do want to ask you about vetting a mediator.
Sure. So the book's available everywhere: Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, all the normal places you get books. And if you like it, I'd ask you all to do me a favor and write a nice review on Amazon because that helps the algorithm do its algorithm thing. I also have a webpage, holdingthecalm.com, where I've been on about 150 podcasts. So I put every podcast on there on every range of topic. So this way, there's some repetition, of course. If you're dealing with kids, you're dealing with divorce, you're dealing with workplace issues, you're dealing with leadership issues, so it's all around that. I post on LinkedIn and Facebook every day. So, because I'm really trying, I have a regular job, so I'm not trying to make money with the book. This is just not fair that only professionals know this stuff. Right? It should be available for everyone. It should be taught in schools, and you shouldn't have to take a master class or a master course or do some fancy big something. You should have access to things to make your life easier and better. And our world needs it desperately right now.
There's so many people going into situations with conflict where having this in their toolbox would be so incredibly helpful to everybody involved. Yeah. So
Huge.
thank you so much for sharing that.
My pleasure. I do want to add one quick thing before the mediator, because it'll make everybody laugh. No, everyone says, oh, conflict, it's an opportunity to grow and to learn. I'm like, yeah, right. So conflict is either like a root canal without anesthesia or a colonoscopy without anesthesia. Depends on which end you're going through. And I wanted to have our listeners have something to laugh about, when we're talking about it.
And like, yep, feels like that. Yep, sometimes
Feels
both
like
at the
that,
same
doesn't
time.
Doesn't it? Lord. Well, you asked about finding a mediator. So that's a challenging question, not because it's a challenging question, but because lawyers control that process. Generally speaking, your lawyer is going to have people that they want to use and that they want to do. And generally speaking, you're a little bit stuck with that. If you can do your own research, and if you have a good relationship with your lawyer to where you can have an opinion about it, research them. I sure as heck would want someone that had done at least 1,000 cases, because otherwise you're a baby. You don't really know enough about what's going on. I'm not a huge fan of former judges because they're used to having power and they tend to try to power through as opposed to negotiate through. So that would be better. Look at their references and their reviews, and then decide, do you think for your opposing person, is a man or a woman better? Is an aggressive personality or a gentle personality better? So literally, what is the bait you're putting on your hook? Because you want this to be effective if you can. A lot of lawyers just say, this is who I use, this is what I know, and then you're kind of stuck with that. But that's literally how you would evaluate that, and you would look at it that way. And the thing is, I'm a big believer, you should not be a piece of meat at a doctor's office. You shouldn't be a piece of meat at a lawyer's office. You should be an informed patient or an informed client. It's part of the empowerment and helps you handle stuff a little better.
We try to encourage people to be the CEO of their divorce and
yeah, I like
take
that
the position of you're hiring, you're managing, you're overseeing, you're in that authority. Of course, you want to be wise and take counsel, but yeah, put yourself in that seat. So thank you so much. This has been fabulous. This is I can't say enough to everyone listening, such a great book. If you're on my podcast, you need this book. So please check it out. What an easy read and just tips and tools throughout. So thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for coming and speaking to our listeners.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
And we'll be back again real soon with another episode of High Conflict Divorce Demystified. You have a great day. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources.
Do you love podcasts? Well, I do too. Hey folks, I'm Clint Powell and I host a number of podcasts and I want to share a few of them with you. During the Break podcast is my legacy podcast. We talk business, politics, relationships, culture, all with interesting people. Give us a listen at duringthebreakpodcast.com. And if you love adventure and the great outdoors, give Dayfire Podcast a listen. I host it with my friend and the founder and former owner of Rock Creek Outfitters, Dawson Wheeler. We talk climbing, hiking, biking, paddling, running, camping, the van life, conservation, and gear, all wrapped in stories of adventure from around the country and from around the world. Find us at dayfirepodcast.com. All of my podcasts can be found on your favorite podcast platform. Oh, and if you like crime podcast, give thecrimecast.com a listen.